Thank you. That's so nice. I know he enjoyed that because he's sitting here watching this. He's laughing his head off of me up here giving this talk right now. So 2 weeks ago, the Dyer family had their celebration of Wayne's life, and each of his family members got up and gave an incredible speech about him and what he meant to them. I've posted all those speeches on Wayne Dyer's Facebook page, so if any of you want to see them, you can. I'm sure some of you have already seen them. But the most touching part of the whole tribute for me was how much all the kids love their dad. And as a father, that's exactly the kind of thing that you want to see is like, oh my God, like I know how much he loved all of them, and then just to see how much they loved him was an incredible experience. And after they had the tribute to the celebration of his life, and many of them went to Maui, and they did a paddle out and put his ashes out into the ocean. And after they put his ashes in the ocean in Maui, which he loved to be in, he swam in that ocean every day for at least for the last 12 or 13 years when he lived there, but for 20 or 30 or 40 years before that when they were visiting in the summers. And it was such a great place where he would really want to be. And when they got done putting the ashes out, Serena took a picture of the ocean, and there's a picture of Wayne's face in the picture. And we posted it on Wayne's Facebook page as well. And it's like, there's no way you can say like he wasn't there. This picture is incredible. And like Wayne is loving this because like we toured Italy and Europe, and at that time everyone was taking pictures of him and orbs were showing up everywhere, and he loved that. He's like, St. Francis is right there, and this is like Mother Teresa, and like I don't know what you guys are doing, Rumi's right up there, and he just loved it. Like he loved taking them, and he's like, look at all those orbs, look how big that one is. So he's over on the other side going, this is so cool, I can put my face in the ocean, and everyone can see me, and this is like the funnest thing ever. And so if I were all of you, I would look for Wayne. He can't wait to show you guys signs that he's still around and still loving us and following us and seeing what we're doing. And so Wayne and I were best friends, and I talked to Wayne like every single day. I've known Wayne for 25 years, and literally like we talked almost every day. My whole family knows, oh, there's Wayne calling, and he was like my mentor, my father, my brother, my like everything. He was very, very important in my life. And one funny thing about Wayne is that every single time that he would call and my kids were around, he goes, let me talk to them. Let me talk to Dane, or let me talk to Ava, because he loved playing around with kids. He always teased me that Dane's named after him, Dane, Wayne, like... And I swear, since my kids were like 3 or 4 years old, every time he grabbed the phone, he'd go, I want to know the Great Lakes. And he taught them that Holmes is the Great Lakes. So it's Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. And so they would rattle them off. I go, Wayne's on the phone. They'd go, pretty soon they were like, let me have the phone. Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior, because he just loved to joke with them, and they loved to joke with him. So that was quite a treat as well. So One of the things, I don't know how many of you get my Present Moments newsletter that I do. How many of you get that now? A lot of you, good. Those that you don't, you can get it from hayhouse.com. But one of the things that I started doing in that newsletter is I started writing letters to people that I love so that I could share the way that I feel with them before they passed away. So you don't have to do it in a memorial service. You do it now while they're still here, while they can appreciate it. And I did a letter to my mom. I did a letter to Louise Hay. I did a letter to Marvelous Marv, I did 2 letters to Marvelous Marv, actually, who's my father-in-law. My wife, Christina, is I don't know, right there. And she had written 5 books with Wayne, and she was very, very close to him as well, 5 children's books. But I did, and that's her dad, Marvelous Marv. And then I also did a letter to Wayne. And one of the things that is helping me even get through the sudden loss of him is knowing that at least I gave him that letter before he passed away. And so I recommend, like, all of you, do it now. Like, write the letters now, tell the people now, because you never know, like, what's going to happen. I was extremely close with Wayne, like I said. But there was someone even closer to Wayne than I was. And this person was like his confidant, his emotional rock, the person that he would go to when he was having trouble. And her name is Maya Labos. And Maya, basically, while Wayne was helping all of us with all our problems, Maya was helping him with his problems. So if he had any of those problems, that's who he'd call. And I really want to acknowledge Maya here. Please stand up, Maya, and get a... So I thought, I think I have it tough for talking to Wayne like every day for 25 years. She talked to him every day for 38 years. So, and so one of the interesting things about Wayne's passing is all the coincidences that have come about because of that. And one of them is that today was the day that he was going to be up here talking and presenting his brand new book, which is called Memories of Heaven. And only Wayne could figure out a way to, like, he goes, I'm going to do this book, Memories of Heaven, but I got this new marketing plan, you know? And Wayne did this book with his assistant in Maui and really, really good friend Dee, who's also here. I don't know where she is right now. Oh, there she is right there. So Dee, if you could stand up too and just So if you need an autograph for this book, she's your lady this time around. And the book is about basically children's memories of heaven. And there's all different chapters and ideas and thoughts in there, but they're still so close to being in heaven, from heaven, to heaven. And they did a Facebook post. Wayne did a Facebook post about our experience with Dee and Marcus, her son, and it went crazy. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of people telling their experience of their children having these still connections for heaven, or remember coming from heaven, or remember what was there, or that sort of thing. So another thing is that Wayne had leukemia. Everyone knew that. It was public information. but he didn't die from leukemia, he died from a heart attack. In fact, when the coroner did the autopsy, there was 0 cancer in his body. And they also pointed out that he had a super clean colon. And if you've been listening to Wayne lately, you know that's from his 12 months of coffee enemas, his daily coffee enemas. Wayne's favorite line is, do you want me to FaceTime you while I do my coffee? I'm sure all his family, which is all right here, his whole family's right here, and I'm sure every single one of them have heard that line and had the same response as me. No, that's okay. We'll save that for another time, Wayne. It's fine. Last night, I was like real restless and I couldn't sleep that much because I was trying to think about what I should say at this tribute to Wayne and all the thousands of stories that I have about him. And I was laying there just thinking of all different things. And one of the things that we knew from Wayne's passing is he died between midnight and 5 a.m. And I started thinking about that, and I go, oh my God, like, I bet that sucker left at 3:13 because he talked about, he wrote his whole book, Inspiration. He said, you know, he had that quote that the morning breeze awakens you. There's things to learn, don't go back to sleep. And he got up at 3:13 for the whole writing of that book. And his movie, The Shift, it starts at 3:13. The very opening of that movie, you can see, it shows 3:13 a.m. He gets up and goes, thank you, thank you, thank you. And he loved that movie. And that was like, if you met Wayne walking down the street and you said, oh my God, are you Wayne Dyer? He would say, yes. He goes, do you have my movie? And if you didn't have his movie, he'd go, here, let me get one for you. He carried them everywhere he went. And he loved being a movie star. And since he passed away, we started offering The Shift online for free, and we're still offering it online for free, and we've had over 1 million people watch it so far. So I know he's loving that. Like, there's nothing he's loving more than that. But that movie, so the movie starts at 3:13, the Inspiration 3:13, and I'm sitting there thinking, God, he left at 3:13. And so I get up, I go in the bathroom, come back, and I look at my clock, 3:13. And I got like the chills, like, oh my God, like, he's like showing me 3:13. And then finally, the last coincidence is that August 30th, 1974 was the most important day in Wayne's life other than his children being born. And that is the day that he went to his father's grave in Biloxi, Mississippi, and he was able to forgive him. And he came back and wrote Your Erroneous Zones in 14 days, the whole entire thing, which changed his life and millions of other people's lives around the world. And he passed away on August 30th, 2015, exactly 41 years after that day. As I said, we were just in Melbourne, in Australia, and we taped Wayne's lecture in Melbourne, Australia. We have an online course with Wayne, and we wanted to get more material to add to that course, so thank God that was his last videotaped course. He did another lecture in New Zealand, but that was his very last talk that was recorded. And in that talk in Melbourne, he talks about the importance of August 30th. So we're going to play that for you right now.
When you are called to do something, and you have a sense that this is the direction my life has to take. Now, I've had these callings in my life. I had them, perhaps the most important calling like this I had in my life occurred on the 30th of August in 1974. I write about it here, and I can see clearly now. Another one of the callings that I had was when I turned 65, to give up everything that I had, to let it all go, and to read the Tao and to study it. And my kids will tell you, I gave away everything I had. All of my clothes were given to homeless people. They were some of the best-dressed homeless people you've ever seen. I had 20,000 books or more that were all donated to hospitals and to places where people can't afford books, schools and so on. I gave away my apartment, my garden apartment where I had done all of my writing for the previous 20 years. I let it all go. Gave it all away. Because I was called to do something. You're all being called. You have these impulses all the time. Here's what it says on page 221. Again, if you will look back, you will recall many times when you felt strongly impelled to do certain things, some of which you did with perfect results, others of which you argued against, your intellect reasoning you into different actions, and often with a failure or disappointment or suffering as a result. Now hear this. This impelling consciousness was only your real self, I within you, that is the personal self, God, Source, Divine Mind. If you don't like those words, call it Louise. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't need a name. Distinctly telling you what to do. At those moments, you were hearing with your spiritual ears. My ears, meaning the impersonal, meaning God speaking to you. And when you impersonally obeyed, success and satisfaction followed you. When you personally thought you knew better, discomfort, regret, and unhappiness often resulted. This is the story of I Can See Clearly Now, of having a willingness to listen and be a scurvy elephant, meaning it doesn't matter if someone else thinks or says you should do it a certain way. It doesn't make any difference. Being willing to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And ultimately, it doesn't even take courage to do that, because the more the people around you realize that you are your own person and you're going to fulfill your dharma and you're going to listen to it, even if everybody else out here thinks that I shouldn't be doing it and everybody in my family ostracizes me, it doesn't make any difference. I am going to listen to that voice, and that voice is capable of creating miracles. Even the least among you can do all that I have done. You have that within you. And that calling on the 30th of August, 1974, was when I went to my father's grave. My father had walked out on us when I was just a baby. And he had three boys. My mother had three boys under the age of 4. I was born in 1940. My brothers were born in 38, 36, during the Great Depression. War was getting ready to start all over the planet, World War II. And he just took off. And I spent my youth into my 20s trying to find this man. When I got back with my mother, when my mother finally realigned her family and got us all back together, my oldest brother was someone I didn't even know. I met him at 10. I knew him apparently when I was 1 or so, but then we got separated. My brother David and I went through it all together, all the different homes and places that we lived. And neither one of them had this burning desire inside to know their father. My oldest brother Jim just dismissed him because he just didn't like him. He remembered him. I had no memory of him, but I had to know. I didn't even know what a father was. I didn't even know the word father meant until I was 6 or 7. Because where I lived, in the foster homes and so on where I lived, there were no fathers. But at any rate, to shorten that story, I ended up in my teens. I would dream about my father every night. I would just be filled with anger and remorse and rancor and rage. I'd wake up, I'd have dreams about him. He spent several years in prison. He was an alcoholic, an abusive man. He was a womanizer. He was a thief. He left my mother and involved himself with 6 or 7 other women, 4 or 5 of which he married. Some were much younger than him. And then in 1964, when I was 24, he passed away, but I didn't know that. I even went to his mother's funeral and volunteered as a pallbearer to carry her body to the grave, thinking I would meet my father. He has to be there. He wouldn't miss his mother's funeral, and he missed his mother's funeral and sent a note and said he couldn't show up because he was afraid my mother would put him back in jail for non-support and so on. This was the man that I had to know about. And every time I told my mother I wanted to know about him, she would just be filled with internal rage. You just don't know what he was and how bad a person he was. But I had to know. And it was a burning desire. Has there been something inside any one of you that you just feel like you're not going to be complete until you reconcile it, whatever it might be? It could be anything. And in 1964, he passed away. And in 1974, I was told by a cousin that I didn't even know I had, who knew that I had been searching for my father. I'd traveled all over the country looking for this man, interviewing his ex-wives and so on. And she told me, she said, "I'm sorry to tell you, Wayne," she said, "but your father died in 1964, 10 years ago. I know you've looked for him." And he died in New Orleans, Louisiana. And his body was shipped to a place called Biloxi, Mississippi. And he was buried in a pauper's grave. That's all I know. He had no money. He was an alcoholic, and he died of cirrhosis of the liver at the age of 49. So that didn't stop my quest. I got on a plane. I flew to New Orleans. I rented a car. I drove to Biloxi. I found out where he was buried. That's a much more involved story than that. We've done a whole film about it called My Greatest Teacher, which I encourage you to watch if you like, a reenactment of some of the events of this time. And I actually went to my father's grave to piss on his grave. I did. That's where I was at that time. I was filled with rage. I just couldn't imagine somebody treating my beautiful mother the way that he treated her and just abandoning 3 children. It just isn't something that I could process in me. And I found his grave. It was on the ground. It said Melvin Lyle Dyer, 1914 to 1964. I cleaned it off, and I cursed, and I swore, and I yelled, and I questioned, and I cried. It was like the end of a vision. And I went, and I got back. I was there for 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours. It was around 8 o'clock in the evening, just getting dark. And I got into my rental car, put on the lap belt, and I was going to drive back to New Orleans, take a flight up to New York. I was a professor at a university in New York City called St. John's University, the largest Catholic university in the world. And I was going to get ready for the fall semester, which was going to start in 2 weeks, to teach the graduate students that were my students. I was 34 years old. And as I started to drive away, a voice, something, an energy, called me back. It's a calling. And I went back to my father's grave. And something came over me in that moment. Something that changed the entire course of my life. I blurted out loud, and I had no idea because I wasn't in the consciousness that I live in today. I blurted out loud, from this moment on, I'm sending you love. Who am I to judge you or anyone? Given the conditions of your life, you did what you knew how to do. You can't ask any more of anyone. I let go. I was sobbing, and I was free. I forgave my father. I just let it go. Honestly, to tell you the truth, right now, right here, in this moment, I feel him here. I have to be careful. I could break down up here. And I have really shortened this. This was the signature moment of my life. At that time, I was overweight. I was drinking. I was doing drugs. I was not taking good care of myself. I was in a terrible relationship. My writing, I was writing textbooks, which was easy, but they weren't what I felt in me. I didn't want to write textbooks. I was writing just to get promoted. And I had written 3 textbooks, all of which were very successful, but I was just off. I got back in the car, and it was like this huge weight had just been taken off of me. I got back to New Orleans. I flew up to New York City. And I went to my home in West Babylon, New York, on Long Island, and gathered up all of the notes that I had been taking, all the recordings of the lectures that I had been giving. I've written about all of this, and I can see clearly now. And I gathered it all up, put it into a big suitcase, flew down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, rented a car, drove to the Spindrift Motel on A1A between Oakland Park and Sunrise Boulevard, checked in, and I sat down, and I wrote. And I wrote. Morning, noon, and night. I hardly even ate. One night I wrote so much, I wrote 77 pages one night, and I forgot to number the pages. And they were all over the motel room floor. And I had to gather them all up and try to figure out which one went where. It's when you let go and just allow this infinite intelligence to flow through you that magical things begin to happen. And that book I wrote was called Your Erroneous Zones. It was published in 1976. About a year and a half later, it became the #1 selling book in the world for the entire decade of the 1970s, fiction and nonfiction. It's published in 47 languages, over 100 million copies of it in print. I changed everything about my life. I started running and exercising. I stopped drinking. I got out of the relationship that I was in. Everything in my life turned around. I met my wife, who became the mother of 7 of my children, 7 of my 8 children. It all turned around in a moment of forgiveness. Mark Twain said, "Forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it." It's like you got to be like that violet. And whatever it is that happens to you, out of you comes something called divine love.
So you can see August 30th was an important time. Now we're going to continue with the tribute. We're going to start with a video from Marianne Williamson of a tribute she gave at her event in Los Angeles. Then we're going to continue to Nancy Levin, who was the event director at Hay House, so she went around the world with Wayne. She has many, many stories. I can't wait to hear what she says. And then we're going to go to Anita Morjani, who wrote the book Dying to Be Me, and she was with us in Australia on the last tour. And then we're going to go to Bruce Lipton. Then we're going to go to Carolyn Mace, both of which have spoke with Wayne, both on programs with just the two of them, as well as many events around the world as well. So let's start off with Marianne's video.
Before we do our opening prayer tonight, we want to mention that many of us in the transformational higher consciousness community, but this includes in terms of lives, he touched millions of people around the world who are mourning the death of a real great, my friend, all of our friend, Wayne Dyer, right before last. Wayne was a friend to the human race. He had a talent and an ability to articulate higher principles of spiritual wisdom and enlightened understanding in a way that absolutely played a major, extremely significant role in opening up the conversation in a way that created a real mainstream impulse. We have him to thank for that. And his books and his teachings and his tapes, of course, will remain with us. Wayne was also very much a man. He was a manly man. And he was, you know, sometimes I hear people talk about, people love to make comments about the particular circle of professional niche that my colleagues and I inhabit. And I've always felt particularly like, these are like the coolest people I've ever met. And Wayne was off stage as well as on, in his life as well as in his books. I think even smarter than you knew. I mean, he was smart in his work, but he was really smart. And he was not only smart about spiritual topics, he was just smart. Understood business, understood politics. I think a lot of the apolitical expression of many people in that field is a decision, and one that is correct for them, but behind the scenes, on every level, he was no fool. He totally got what was going on in this world on every level. And when he did speak about larger social, political, and economic issues, you really listened because it was so clear he had no axe to grind. So even though we feel very sad for his closest friends and family, his children, Reed and Maya and Louise, and those who were so close to him, and we of course share our condolences with those who loved him most and knew him best. But I'm sure that we are joined with them in knowing that, as the Course in Miracles says, and as Wayne definitely knew as a student and wrote about and talked about, death does not exist. And I know often for myself, when someone that I know, someone that I've loved has died, I think we all go through this. You have like a vision. And mine of Wayne over the last 24 hours or so has been, I know I read a book many years ago. It's a series of books called Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Barrett Spalding. And there's a story in there that's always been an image that has intrigued me. And I can't remember if it said they meet once a year or whatever. Of course, it's in a quantum realm where there is no time. But there's this image of this mountaintop. And Jesus and Buddha and Moses and Muhammad, all of them sort of get together for this kind of, fraternity thing. And the image that I've had for over 24 hours has been Wayne Dyer joining the crowd, everybody high-fiving. So the Course in Miracles says one day we will realize death is not the punishment, death is the reward. There are times when we face in our lives, and we have faced here together, situations that are genuinely tragic. Wayne Dyer's death is not tragic. It's sad for those of us who loved him, but we rejoice. And I know that all of us not only pray for Wayne and share our condolences with his family, but also rejoice. I think sometimes, and this is so in line with the Course, and I felt this, and I think many of us felt it. I knew Wayne was big, and I knew he was important, but boy, since I heard about his death, I've seen how even bigger he was than I knew, how even more important than I appreciated. Because when people on this planet, you have stuff and relationships, and we're all human, and we're all working our stuff. But as the Course in Miracles points out, death removes the veil. And I think we are really, at this moment, aware, wow, something really powerful was among us in the form of this man. And we are happy for him that he gets to go to that next stage of his own adventure, and also deeply grateful that we got to live at a time and in a situation where we could receive his gifts, and how God is great that we can receive them still. So, Wayne, I know you hear us. I know you will forgive if my grammar wasn't perfect, if he loved deeply. Aren't we blessed? Let's pray. Dear God, we see in the middle of our mind a little ball of golden light. We watch this light as it begins to grow, larger and larger, until now it covers the entire inner vision of our mind. And we see for ourselves within this light a beautiful temple. We see a garden that surrounds the temple and a body of water that flows through the garden. We see that the inside of the temple is lit as well by this same beautiful golden light. And here we are, for we have been drawn together by the power and in the presence of God. And we devote our time spent together in all of our relationships and experiences of one another to him. Dear God, we pray tonight for a beloved brother, giving thanks, dear God, to you and to him, that Wayne Dyer walked the earth when we did, that he gave so much that we have all received. We pray for comfort for his family and closest friends at this time of their grief, also joining with them in their rejoicing. For we thank you, dear God, that we know that in you death itself is vanquished in eternal life. We know that Wayne has not died, for death does not exist. And we pray that he can feel our love and our gratitude, our best wishes and our prayers for his sweet, blissful entrance into this next phase of his adventure. And may all the comfort, the goodness, the hope, and the inspiration that he gave to millions of people while on this earth, may it all come pouring forth in the form of joy and peace where he is now. And so it is, together. We all say, amen.
Hi, I'm Nancy Levin, and as Reed mentioned earlier, I was the event director at Hay House for 12 years. And during that time, I traveled the world with Wayne Dyer. So you can imagine I have a lot of stories. And Wayne, for me, was not only a great teacher, he was a great man. I loved the man. And some of my favorite times with him were when we were sitting in airports hanging out, and no matter who came up and wanted to talk to him, he was more than happy to really make them feel like they were the most important person in the whole world. And some of my other favorite times were hanging out with him backstage before he went on to speak. And I'll tell you, we're back there watching on the monitor the video of him in Melbourne, and it was such a familiar experience for me being backstage watching the monitor. I really expected to walk out here and see him. And it's not that I'm in denial, I'm just still in disbelief, as I imagine most of us are. So one of my favorite Wayne stories, we were traveling in 2007, and we had 2 events back to back. Atlanta on Saturday, Detroit on Sunday. We do the event in Atlanta, we hop in the van, the whole crew of us. We get to Detroit, we have dinner, it's about 10 o'clock, we're all tucked away in our rooms. Wayne calls me, "Nancy, I can't find my briefcase. I'm sure I left it en route from Atlanta. I can't go on stage tomorrow without this briefcase. All my notes are in there for my talk. All my notes are in there for my next book. You have to help me." So I'm like, "Wayne, calm down. I'll find the briefcase." I had somehow created this persona of Superwoman, and Wayne liked to test it. So I call the car company in Atlanta. It occurs to me the briefcase must be in the van we took to the airport. I call the car company. The van is still out doing a job. It won't be back till close to midnight. The guy says he'll call me back. So I'm like biting my nails. I'm trying to watch something on TV to distract me. I'm just doing anything I can. And the guy finally calls me back about 11:30 and says, "I have some bad news, but the van is back. There's no briefcase." And I said, "I know it's in there. I need you to go out there with a flashlight. It's black, it's dark. The briefcase is black, you know, it's dark. The van is dark. I need you to go out there. I know it's like under a seat." And I sat on hold and I prayed, and indeed, the briefcase was in the van. So I say to the guy, "You know, will you put one of your drivers on a flight tomorrow morning first thing to bring me the briefcase?" Unfortunately, after 9/11, you can't fly with someone else's luggage. So it's now about 11:30. Wayne calls me, and I said, "I was just about to call you. It turns out I have found the briefcase, and I am going to figure out a way to get it here. Go to bed." And I then spend the next few hours trying to figure out how to get this briefcase from Atlanta to Detroit before 2 p.m. I call my travel agent, Andrea. She's on the West Coast, so the time difference is in our favor. We call FedEx. We call every cargo. We call every airline. We do every single thing we can, but because it's a Saturday night, there's absolutely no way to get this briefcase there. It's now 2 in the morning. And as I've mentioned, I had sort of created this persona of heroic efforts. And so the next thing I know, at 4 a.m., I find myself in the taxi on the way to the airport, booking my flight online in the taxi. I get on a plane, I fly to Atlanta, and the guy from the car company is waiting for me. I get back on the plane. It's now about 9:30 in the morning, and I call Wayne. And I said, "Wayne, I have your briefcase." And he said, "Where are you?" I said, "That's not important. I'll see you at the venue. And he said, Nancy, did you do something crazy? And I said, go to your Bikram yoga class, and I'll see you soon. So I get to the venue. We're expecting about 2,000 people that day. And I get there literally as he's getting out of the car. And there's hundreds of people even just around the car waiting for him to come out. And I see him, and he sees me, and I'm holding the briefcase. And Wayne says, that? I don't need that. And then I flipped off the father of motivation. And so, as was customary when I introduced him and brought him on stage for his talks, I would always say, he needs no introduction, welcome to the stage, one of my most favorite men in the world, Wayne Dyer. And then he would come on and give me a kiss and a hug, and I would tell him to have fun. And that day, he held me on stage, and he was so proud to tell everybody what I had done for him, and then even that I flipped him off. And the briefcase became a running joke with us, because that wasn't the only time. And then there was the time of leaving his green drink powder in Pasadena. And then there was the time of leaving his pants in Boston, and we were already in London. I could go on. But shortly thereafter, the one event only in the history of our events that Maya didn't come with us because of a health issue, Wayne called me shortly before he was going on stage, and he said, Nancy, can you come to my room and iron my shirt? And I said, Wayne, I actually have no idea how to iron. And he was ecstatic that he found the one thing I couldn't do. And, you know, I picture him now hanging out over there with Rumi, Patanjali, Lao Tzu, Peter Dunoff, and St. Francis. And, you know, even in his death, Wayne is still teaching. And I'm still integrating the deeper lessons of myself and my life through him. And I want to share a poem that is by one of my favorite poets. His name is Mark Doty. And this poem's called Everywhere. And Wayne was a great lover of poetry. It's something that we shared. And I dedicate this to him. Everywhere. I thought I'd lost you, but you said I'm imbued in the fabric of things. The way that wax lost from batik shapes the pattern where the dye won't take. I make the space around you, and so allow you shape. And always you'll feel the traces of that wax soaked far into the weave, the air around your gestures, the silence after you speak. That's me, that slight wind between your hand and what you're reaching for. Chair and paper, book or cup. That close where I am, between where breath ends, air starts. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is so difficult for me. Probably one of the hardest evenings of my career as a Hay House author. I cast my mind back to about 4.5 years ago, when Wayne Dyer discovered my story. For those of you who know my story, my name is Anita Murjani, and I wrote the book Dying to Be Me, which is about my sojourn in the afterlife. I had written my story on the internet, and somebody had brought it to Wayne's attention. And he was so fascinated with my story that he had Hay House track me down. I didn't even have my full name on the story that was on the internet. But he was so determined to find me because he wanted to know who had that experience. He wanted to know the details. So he had Hay House track me down, and I believe it took them 5 months to find me. And it was a lot of synchronicities that took place. Literally, I received the email from them on the day that I felt ready to share my story in public, because up to that point, I hadn't been ready. I had been hiding behind a pseudonym because I didn't know how my experience would be received. So I received this email from Hay House saying, Wayne Dyer has discovered my story. And I remember crying because I knew who he was. I mean, who doesn't know who Wayne Dyer is? And after being in contact with Hay House and then with Wayne Dyer, that email came to me on my birthday in March of 2011. And over the next few months, Wayne encouraged me to write a book. I signed the book deal with Hay House, and he told me that he would share my story with everyone in the world. That same year, he flew me to Pasadena to speak on the stage. He said, I want you to speak on the stage and share your story with the audience. There were 3,000 people in the audience, and I had never shared my story to such a big audience ever before. It was my first time standing on stage in front of an audience. And he said, go on, share your story. I was nervous. I was shaking. And he said, are you scared? I said, of course I'm scared. It's my first time on stage. And he said, what have you got to be scared about? You've been dead and back. And I actually said to him, dying is easier than speaking on stage. Thank you. But on that day, I remember he was so fascinated, as he's been over the 4 years. He was so fascinated with everything that I experienced in the afterlife. Because I had been on my deathbed from end-stage cancer, and I was in a coma, and the doctors said I wasn't coming out. And I'd experienced all these things of feeling my family and seeing and hearing everything that was happening. And he wanted to know every detail. And I thought that was hard, sharing my story for the first time about the other side. Today is even harder because now Wayne is on the other side. But yet I know that he's here and there and everywhere. And I see his family members. He loved his family so much. He would talk about his children all the time, every chance he get. It feels so surreal that he's gone because I've been speaking at events and he's always there. And he always still pulls me up on stage. And it feels so surreal that even though it's been 3 weeks, I'm still waiting for him to pop out and say, I just had an NDE. And it would be so typical of him to say, I was gone longer than you, so mine's better than yours. I remember the first day that I heard about his passing. Some friends had come over for lunch, and the day started out really well. And a friend of mine, she came over and she brought me this beautiful, huge bouquet of orange flowers. They really were beautiful. Big bouquet of orange flowers. And when she handed them to me, she said to me, "What's with the orange?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Somebody, a deceased person, someone close to you or who you know really well or a family member, said to me, 'Get orange.' I was about to get the red flowers for you, but this voice just kept saying, 'No, orange, get the orange ones.' So I got the orange ones for you. So what's with the orange?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, orange is my favorite color, but it's not something that my deceased father or my best friend has ever done in all the years that they've been gone. This is the first time somebody's ever said that." And internally, I thought to myself that, oh God, I hope someone I love hasn't just died or something. Because I had a feeling that this message was not from someone who's been there for a while, but maybe from someone who's just passed. We were sitting down to lunch 2 hours later, and that was when I received the phone call from Maya. And when I saw Maya, it was Maya on the caller ID, I just went, "Hey, Maya." And then I heard her tearful voice say, "It's Wayne." And that's when I knew. And my heart really sank. And then the orange flowers made sense. Because he used to tease me backstage about orange being my favorite color. My phone case, my wallet, my handbags, everything was orange. And if you remember, he always had an orange on the stage. He would throw them at people in the audience after telling his story about the orange. And that whole week, just before he passed, his meme or his quote on his Facebook page every day I kept seeing was the story about him asking the little boy about what would you get if you squeezed an orange. This is how our deceased loved ones communicate with us. Because I remember that when I crossed over, of course I had no body. No physical body. But I also had no voice. And I remember I wanted to tell my family that I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm finally free. I'm free of this physical body that's held me back. I know that's what Wayne would want you to know. If you could hear him now, that's what he would want to tell you. Because that's what I wanted to tell my family. I could feel everything that they were feeling. I could feel their emotions. I could see things beyond the room that my physical body was in. I could see things that related to everybody whose lives I'd touched or who'd touched me. When you think about Wayne, he's touched millions of lives, millions and millions of lives. He can now be there for everybody. He's there for everybody whose life he's touched. He's doing what he's always loved to do in a much bigger way. One thing about Wayne was he was really a passionate teacher. He always wanted people to understand even the most complex concepts. Not just complex concepts, but even concepts that you would find boring. Do you remember the Vasistas Yoga? That thick 800-page book that he would hold up? He didn't ask you to go and read that book. He read it for you. And then he distilled it. And he gave you the lessons. He wanted you to get it. Now, he's able to make sure you get it by being there for everybody. Because he will be sending little messages and signals to everybody who's touched him. And I've already heard so many stories from people, especially from his kids who he loved so much, He's shown himself in so many ways, like appearing in photographs. One of the things that is really important to know is that when I was in the other realm, I realized that time is not linear, not like the way it is here. So we're not restricted. When we are without our bodies, when we die and we're without our bodies, we're not limited to this physical time and space. And that means time, the way we measure it here, is very different. It doesn't apply there. So it means that if you feel 30, 40, 50, 60 years pass here as literally what it feels like 60 years, one moment after the next moment, after the next moment, until you reach 30, 40, 50, 60 years. It doesn't feel like that in that realm. Because when I was in that realm, I could experience past, present, and future as though it was happening around me, then and there, in that present moment. It was like everything was happening in the present moment. So the reason I explain this is that I want you to know that one day, and this is specifically for you, his children, and his wife, it's specifically for all of you, that one day when you cross over, you will be reunited with him again. It doesn't matter how many years pass for us. It'll be like the blink of an eye for the person in the other realm. It doesn't feel like 50 years in the other realm. He will still be there. Because all of time exists simultaneously, you don't have to worry whether he's been reincarnated, because he will wait until you get there. And even if he is reincarnated somewhere else, he will ensure that he is there with you in spirit. People have asked me questions like, do you recognize your loved ones when you cross over? You absolutely do, because even if they don't have their bodies, you actually will see them in the way they last appeared when you last left them. And that, the way you see them is for your benefit, because they are without their bodies and they're fulfilling their dharma in a bigger way than ever before. Today, Wayne knows his magnificence. And if we grieve, if we're sad, we're doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for our own healing. We're not doing it for him. And because time is not linear over there, when you need his help, when you need to talk to him, he can hear you. I remember when I was in the other realm, I could feel and hear the thoughts of my loved ones. I knew that my husband was actually, he was distraught. He was fearful that I was going to die. And my mother, they were distraught. And I could hear them. I could feel them. I want you to know that he knows when you're communicating with him. So anytime you need to talk to him, you can talk to him. He can hear you. Wayne was larger than life, even in physical life. He had a great sense of humor. I will always remember him for his sense of humor. Every time he saw my husband, who happens to share the same hairstyle as Wayne, by the way, every time he saw my husband, he would say, let's put our heads together and make an ass out of ourselves. And even though he said that every time, we still laughed every time. And that's the memory I would like to keep with me about Wayne Dyer, the man who was larger than life in life, but now beyond life, he's going to be even larger. And he's going to be able to do what he loves to do most in an even bigger way. So thank you. And
Oh, how wonderful to see all of you here. I'm so appreciative of you being here, and I'm also appreciative of all the thousands of people around the planet at this moment watching this show live, because all of you are here to pay tribute to a great man. I'm here to do the same. This great man, Wayne, so influenced my life at so many different levels as he's influenced people all over the world. People say that maybe Wayne has passed, but Wayne can never pass. Wayne is written into the history of this civilization. He has changed this world by his being in this world. And I know that, as I said, from my personal level, as well as all of you, how he's affected your own personal life. What was interesting was the first time I ran into Wayne, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what he had written. I didn't even meet him. How did I get in touch with Wayne? And the answer was simple. My research at the University of Wisconsin, while I was teaching at the medical school, revealed a whole new insight into the nature of biology, which is written into the biology of belief. At that time, all of the scientists in my community were so gung-ho about genes controlling life, and my research came up and revealed that was totally false. And I was the only one. And I kept trying to influence my colleagues about this new science, and they kept resisting it because they were playing the game of I'm with you and everybody's over there, and Lipton, you're over here. So I thought, okay, guess what? I walked out of the university. I had tenure, and I said, this is not the world that I can work with. I walked out and I went into the mainstream and I started talking to the public, and the most wonderful thing happened when I started getting into the public. More and more people showed up. More and more people were interested in all of this, and I was wondering myself, well, where's all this interest coming from? And I started to find there was a common denominator. Most of them had been awakened to another reality by Wayne. Wayne had changed their lives and said, there's something outside of this box that is much bigger than what we've been talking about in the field of science. And I was so excited because I went into this community that Wayne had set up, and they were the most receptive of all the people. And it was really interesting because that was how he affected me on a professional level, but more so, Wayne is also a very wonderful teacher, as you well know, but he also does something very interesting. When he finds interesting people, such as beautiful Anita, who was just out here, he doesn't just say, oh, let me tell you what Anita said. He said, let me bring Anita here and let Anita tell you what she said. And he did that for me. He got Hay House with Reed and Louise and said, let's bring Lipton into this group, which to me was kind of exciting because I found a home after being out on the street. And we had a wonderful time together. Every time I would meet up with him, it was really exciting. As Anita said, he is much larger than life. And, you know, I don't have a great stature. I'm relatively short, but I didn't realize how short I was until the first day that I met Wayne. And I hugged him, and then I looked up, and I realized this guy is big. But instead of being intimidated by that bigness, there was a different feeling about it. I felt in his arms when I held him and he held me and we hugged at our first meeting, I felt something completely different. I felt the security of a child who was loved by a parent. I was held by him and I could feel the love that exuded from Wayne. In my first picture here that I'd like to show you of Wayne and myself, this was an interesting picture because this picture really was outside in the street having a wonderful conversation, heart to heart. I took the opportunity to put my hand on his heart so I could get my battery charged at the same time. And we had a great time talking, and this was after he just presented to an audience of several thousand people. He's getting a breather in his break, and guess what? What happened next was some people came up and started talking. He gave his lecture again right out there in the street to two people, because that's who Wayne was. He had a message to share, and it didn't make a difference if there were thousands of people to hear the message or one person was here to message. He knew he had a mission. He came to this planet, carried out this mission, and guess what? And we all know this, and Anita mentioned it, and for me as a scientist, I'm excited to say this. We can't die. We're not even in these bodies. We're out here. Wayne's still here. Anybody can talk to him at any time they want because he's in the field of our love in our world. And it's interesting because, while he affected me on a professional level, He affected me on a public level with all those people that I met. He affected me on a personal level. He was a mentor. He gave me advice and help and said, listen, let's get that message of yours out into this world. And I so appreciated that. But I know he affected people, millions of people all around the world. Every one of you may come up with a story about how something he said, something he wrote, changed your life at that moment. Well, of course all of you have that. And I have a dear friend of mine by the name of Laurelyn from Oregon. Laurelyn and I have been friends for over 30 years, and Margaret, my partner, and I perceive of Laurelyn and her family as our family. And it's interesting because Laurelyn, like many of us, had a real issue with a change of life. In 1976, when Wayne's first book came out, Laurelyn had left her husband. She was born and raised in Los Angeles, Tinseltown, and at some point said, this is not the life. This is not the life at all. And she just picked up her 4 kids and went off into the woods of Oregon, bought an old piece of farmhouse that hippies used to live in, and brought her family there. And what was so interesting is, of course, she went without a husband, without a father for her kids. But what did she get? She took Wayne's book. And that was the first. She now owns every book that Wayne ever wrote, every video he was ever on. Why was it relevant? Because Wayne became the father of that family. He raised her kids with a heart and a consciousness and integrity and intelligence. And Laurelyn's kids today are just the most wonderful people in their community, evolutionarily advancing that civilization. Why? Because they grew up with Wayne. They took Wayne's message and built it right into their lives. Wayne is their father. And when he provided that growth period for them, they turned into the best specimens of humanity I know today. And they carried that all the way through their life. One of the interesting stories is when one of Laurelyn's children, her youngest daughter, was to have a baby, and that was back in 2000. During the last trimester, her daughter was reading Wayne's Your Sacred Self, and that became her reading every day in the last trimester. And it comes time for the birth, and of course, Laurelyn, being who she is and the community she was in, it was not a hospital birth. It was a birth at home. A midwife and a bunch of women, including my partner Margaret, were there. All the women supporting her daughter in this very momentous, important event. And what happened was the baby started to come through in the birth canal, but it was a breech birth. The legs came out first, and the baby got stuck in that position. They were more than a half hour away from a hospital at the closest place, maybe an hour. And they realized, oh my God, there's nothing you can do. You're out here in the middle of nowhere. And the baby's legs were twitching and twitching as it was coming out of the birth canal. But by the time the child was delivered, it laid out on the bed, no movement. It was blue already from not breathing, no breath. Everyone in the room started to be in a moment of fear. They started to just, oh my God. And her daughter just got up in all full power of Wayne and all full power of a woman who's a mother and protecting her child, just got up and looked at all the women in that room and said to her mother, who had that look of fear on her face, she said, "Mother, wipe that look off your face right now." She turned to the rest of the women and she said to them, "Fill this room with love and light right now." She was taking the words right out of Wayne. Wayne was in the room. At that moment, she also then said, "There's no fear in here. And what we're going to do is this. I want you all to make the sound of creation, the ah meditation that Wayne taught." And all the people in the room started to go through the ah meditation. And as their voices lifted, all of a sudden, this baby that had not moved, that didn't twitch or nothing, all of a sudden took a breath and started to breathe, and the color started to come back in. And the whole reality of all this was to recognize the power that Wayne was in that room. Wayne came out of that woman's voice saying, "Do not live in this fear. You are more powerful than you ever know. It's only your fear that is limiting you." And the whole wonderful part about this is Wayne's here all the time. Wayne has helped people take the power back over their lives. Most of you have probably experienced that personally. So I'm not here to be sad, although it really shocked me when I heard about it, because I've never known somebody so full of the vital essence of life as Wayne that the thought of him not having that it just didn't compute. But when I did realize it and own that, then I also owned the truth and the wonderful vision, as I said. Wayne will never leave us. Wayne is part of human civilization's history. The evolution of this planet was greatly influenced by this great man. And before I close, I want to show a video, a little segment of a show that I was on with Wayne. Give you the little background story on it, and it goes like this. The first time I really met in the public with Wayne was at I Can Do It conference in Las Vegas in 2008. My mother was about 90-something at the time, had bad knees, so we had to bring her to Las Vegas in a wheelchair, put her up in the front. And this was a show of Hay House Radio, which was being videotaped. And what's interesting about this, before the show was going, I was trying to, enthuse my mother, but the community was like you. There was a lot of energy. Just, come on, this is a great place to be. My mother had an issue, a developmental issue growing up in the family she grew up in. Happiness was not really allowed to be expressed at some level, so I always wanted her to be happy. I always tried to make jokes for her or something, and sometimes she would smile, but you could see it was a stretch for her imagination. And I want to show you this video because it resulted in such a radical change in my mother that this is the first time she laughed out so loud that tears were coming down her eyes. And it all reflects the joy and the humor that was wrapped up in Wayne. So if I can push this button and maybe have a slideshow up.
Wayne's World, first time, excellent.
Introducing yourselves to one another.
Okay. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Wayne. Can I say something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Mom, I made it because I'm on the stage with Wayne Dyer. And that was the part that opened my mother up. And she laughed, and the next few years of her life, she was open to laughing. And I have to thank Wayne because he is that power that brought joy and laughter and consciousness and integrity and intelligence, as everyone has already mentioned. That is Wayne. Wayne is here. Wayne is here right now. He will never leave us. He's been one of our greatest teachers, and I've been so honored to be that close to Wayne that I could leave you with this slide that I will always remember in this next picture right here of myself and Wayne. And this is a picture that I will always remember Wayne with. And I want to thank you for honoring Wayne. Wayne is our hero, and Wayne is here. Thank you all very much.
Beautiful. Good evening. This is, where do I begin? I made notes and I thought, I don't know what to say. I have too much to say. I have so little to say. So I thought I would just begin by my experience with Wayne. Unlike, we all get to know somebody in our own way. And I got to know Wayne through, I guess, the Catholic in me. Yeah. He liked St. Francis. And when Wayne became ill is when I got to know him. And when he became ill with leukemia. And that's when the door opened between the two of us. And so I remember our conversations opening up with what he wanted to know, what I knew about St. Francis, what I knew about Lourdes, what I knew about Fatima, what I knew about the Catholic side of Razzle Dazzle. So we had all of these conversations about miracles and healing, and what is healing and what is miracle, and what makes that happen. And for me, this was very surprising, because I did not expect that from Wayne Dyer. I didn't expect to see this. But what I came to realize as I got to know him was that, and how I came to think about him actually, is that he was more of a mystic as the last years of his life unfolded. And that as I'm listening to my wonderful colleagues and dear friends speak about him, we're actually talking about a man who lived the last years of his life as a mystic on a journey, and how he shared that journey with everybody, and that he was actually bursting with that journey. And that is a true sign of the contemporary mystic, which is, I think, even his language. He spoke about a calling. He spoke about what it is to be called, and I think that probably thrilled him more, to recognize what it is to be called by name. And I know in my own work, when I talk to people about that experience of what it is to hear God call you by name. And it's not the experience of having someone, knock on a door and say, yo, you home. But it's when you start to feel the unmistakable feel within, an unmistakable urge, when the awakening of your charism, the singular grace by which God knows you, your charism, and that it awakens and it begins to determine your life more than your own choices, and it pulls you. And it is a tug of war from which you struggle, but the struggle is one you do not want to end. And it is the only struggle you don't want to end, the struggle between you and God. And if it did end, that would be the greatest sorrow of your life. It's not the struggle, it's the thought that it might end. Wayne, for me, became a companion mystic, and that's what I loved about him. I found in him someone who loved the journey of the soul as much as I did. He loved Lourdes. He didn't go there because he hoped that there were such things as miracles. He went there because he knew it. He knew it. And I think one of the things that I have come to realize in my own work now, and there's something about reaching an age where you're comfortable to finally say what you think and mean what you say. Not that I've had a problem with that, but but the part of what I recognize as the great suffering of our time is that the search that so many people are on and continue to be on should have long come to a pass. You should have found what you're searching for. But the search that so many people continue to be on, I think that we have made our spiritual journey the identification of what we do not believe, rather than naming what we do. That we are far more comfortable being sure of what we do not believe than discovering with deep faith and resolve what it is we do believe. And a mystic is someone who comes into contact with an awakening of what they do, what they know, their past belief. They just know. They've had experiences. They've had an experience of the divine. Instead of thinking about God, instead of discussing God, they've actually had an experience of something. And what happens is an awakening happens, and they've got to share it. You know, in the classic mystic tradition, when someone's been touched by God, oftentimes they're called berserk. Oftentimes they become a little mad because of the ecstasy of it, because they can't stop sharing what they know from the other side, because they can't seem to communicate within reason. They can't prove where they've been. They can't bring it back. And because we're so, people of the word, people of proof, tell me where you've been. How did you get there? What's its value to me? What's its purpose? Can you just prove that there's such a thing as a God? Can you just prove that there's such a thing as healing, etc.? So that the mystical experience, can you prove that there's an afterlife? Can you prove that you really are on the other side? Can you just move this object? Can you just do it? Can you please do it? But for someone who's, I was once engaged to one of the gentlemen who did most of the research on near-death experiences. I used to go to dinner parties where I was the only one who hadn't died. I'm not kidding you. Oh, my God, not another near-deather. Okay, so. But it was an extraordinary time for me because from my point of view, I saw how hungry people were to believe that there was something other than this world. That there was something other than here. I never had a problem with believing that. I grew up where believing in the other side, the presence of angels, the presence of miracles, was so ordinary. That was ordinary. Not believing would have been extraordinary for me. So this, for me, I looked with wonder upon people that had to go to that extent. Like I would think, what is your life like if you have so much doubt? How can you even leave your house? I wouldn't be able to get out of the bed in the morning if you did, if I had that kind of doubt. What I think one of the contagions of someone like Wayne, one of the sparkles, is that he made it to the other side in his work. He discovered the mystic in him. And that's how he drew people to him. That was the source of the generosity in his soul. He was a phenomenally generous human being. One of the things I noticed about him was then when he found somebody whose story was one of victory, he wanted that person to be celebrated. When he found someone who really struggled, he wanted to help that person. He related to that. He related to someone who really who picked up their boots and got up and kept walking, or what did he say? Pick up your bed and kept walking. He loved that. He loved the human spirit so much that when he saw someone who really engaged it, he would say, come on, everyone's got to know your story. Everyone's got to see your story, and everyone's got to Everyone's got to appreciate your spirit. Everyone. It's not enough. I've got to make sure everyone knows your spirit. And I have to tell you something. One of the signatures of a truly holy person, is that kind of generosity. It's one thing to be generous with your friends, but I have to tell you something. The kind of generosity that empowers another person, that says, I am going to take you and share and empower your life, that is a rare kind of generosity. You understand what I'm saying? To empower another person to empower their life, that is a different kind of generosity. Being generous with $5 is not a big deal. But to say to another person, I'm going to help you with your career. I'm going to introduce you to people that are going, I'm going to help you with your life. I'm going to help take your life and make it something along the way. That takes the generosity of your character. That takes the generosity of your soul. This is who he was. He helped people along the way like that. He found people. He was drawn to people who went through transformation and said, everyone's got to know about you. Everybody's got to know about you. Come with me. Everybody's got to know about you. He was always doing that. I loved that in him. I loved the genuineness of him. And there's something about that that constantly told me that whatever the full texture of his spiritual life was, it was genuine. The hand of God was in his life. I loved him for that. I truly loved him for that. And I have to say, the way he died, the sudden evaporation, even that was maybe not so sudden, because Wayne spent a long time preparing to leave in a short time. He spent a long time in prayer and in meditation and in spiritual journeys. He spent a long time these past years on a true, genuine inner quest, doing all the things that he wanted to do the right way. He turned his life into a monastery without walls. I think that's the best way to describe it. He turned his life into a monastery without walls, and he loved from that position. He was a mystic without a monastery. And he lived in that way. He became, with every year, he became somehow or other, his lifestyle became leaner and more along the lines of the monastic. I don't need this, I don't need this, I think I'll cleanse this. He just year by year by year shed, which is exactly, if you followed the course of spiritual direction, you would discover that your own inner being will tell you right on schedule, get rid of this. Get rid of this. Stop acquiring. Stop it. Stop. It's time to start shedding. Stop it. It's time to get rid of. You'll see in yourself that there is a natural instinct where there's a switch that just goes the other way and you start wanting to shed. And he followed that. And in the shedding of stuff, you open yourself to others. It's a natural thing. When you stop focusing your whole life on taking, you have the room to give. It's the other mechanism. And he became that. I'll end on one story that when as I thought about the many that I could share on Wayne, someone I knew had been in a plane accident, survived a plane crash. And he told me that in the leaving at the tail end, he turned and he saw in the smoke, kind of the days, and they're leaving the end of the plane. And he saw angels coming to take people from their bodies, to escort them. And he noticed that some of the spirits, some of the souls leaving their bodies were emaciated. And some, regardless of the size of their body, when the souls came out, they were obese. And he said, he thought, oh, what is that? And his own angel was escorting him at that point. And his angel instantly answered and said, well, the ones that were emaciated died selfish. They have nothing to bring home. The ones who are obese are taking all the acts of love with them, all the good things they've done, all the things they've helped. These are the records of their life that they are taking with. And he vowed as he left that plane that he would die obese as he could. I suspect Wayne died a totally obese human being.
I was trying to think of a great thing to say to sum up all those wonderful talks, and all I can say is wow. So one of the things that Wayne's family did for their ceremony around his passing is they released butterflies. And I decided to play another clip of Wayne's lectures all about why they would release butterflies, and I'm going to let you see it right here.
I'm going to tell you a story that just blew me away. I think it perhaps was the signature story of my life in terms of connecting to spirit. I've never experienced anything like this before. I finished writing Inspiration, Your Ultimate Calling, on the 23rd of April. And I knew that the book was going to have 18 chapters in it, because 18 is that magical number, one infinite source. One infinite source. I put that number on my dashboard of my car. I have it on the mirror. It's a reminder. One infinite source, 18. It's the number of chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. It's the number of holes on a golf course. It's got to have something holy to it. And so I had 17 chapters written, and I was thrilled to have that completed. But I still had one chapter to go, but I was holding that off until my birthday on the 10th of May. And I knew what that last chapter was going to be, my experience of living an inspired life, just telling it on my birthday, right around 3:13 or so in the morning. So I was essentially done. And I went for a walk that day, and when I finished that chapter, that 17th chapter, I told a story in there about my friend Jack Boland. He passed away about 12 years ago. Jack was a Unity minister in Detroit, a man who, when I wrote Your Erroneous Zones 3 decades ago, called me up and asked me if he could put together some tapes on it, and would I give him permission. And he had started a Unity church over on the east side of Detroit, and asked me if he could use that. I said, absolutely. And over the years, I began to speak at his church and his congregation and come to Detroit a lot, my home, and we became very close. We became like brothers. And he got very sick, and he had cancer throughout his back and so on. And I went with him to my friend Deepak Chopra's place, the Ayurveda Center out in Massachusetts. During the day, we would go out, and then in the evening, he would come in, and Jack always had to have a story. He had to tell a story. And he started talking to me about these wonderful little creatures called monarch butterflies, and how much he loved them. And the reason that he loved them, he said, Wayne, these are the most amazing little things in the world. I mean, they've got a brain the size of a pinprick, just no brain, essentially, and they're made out of tissue paper, you know, like toilet paper. They're just flimsy little things, and they come out, and they come out of a chrysalis on a branch in a tree in Brazil. Now they don't have a brain, and they're made out of toilet paper, essentially, and they fly to Nova Scotia, 4,385 miles away. And they spend some time there doing whatever you do in Nova Scotia if you're a monarch butterfly. And then they turn around, these pinprick brain toilet paper insects, and they fly all the way back to Brazil. But not only do they go back to Brazil, they go back to the same tree. Not only do they go back to the same tree, they go back to the same branch. And they start the whole process all over again with another cocoon. I mean, it's like, I've got a brain that's supposed to be pretty good size. I leave my cell phone in the bedroom. I did this just the other day, and I walk out of the bedroom, I can't find my cell phone. I have to call the number on another phone, and I'm listening to this funny little sound and looking under pillows. I know it's over. I had to call twice because I didn't want to get charged for the first call. Well, anyway, and these things can find the same branch that they came out of a cocoon on. So anyway, he would tell me about the miracle of these things. All right. So I wrote that whole story. The 17th chapter is about the language of spirit, how spirit speaks to us in ways that we're not even aware of. It speaks in terms of alignments. When things align, when the same numbers appear, the same ideas keep showing up, when these kinds of alignments show up. So I called my editor, Joanna, who's here tonight, who's edited everything I've done for the last 30 years or so, and only person in the world who can read my handwriting. I read her the story of Jack and the monarch butterfly, and I called my friend, the president of Hay House, who's my publisher, who's also here tonight, Reed Tracy, my best friends in the world. And I read both of them the story. All right? And then, because I always do that when I finish a chapter, I read it to just see what it sounds like. Took off on my walk. It's 12:30 in the afternoon. I'm going for a walk along Kaanapali Beach. And I walk, and I walk, and I get out to this place called Black Rock, out on West Maui. And I'm walking there, and I'm at peace, and I'm going to meditate, and I got my cell phone with me, you know, I found it, and a monarch butterfly flies right out of the tree, and I don't think I've ever seen monarchs there before, right? A monarch butterfly flies out of the tree and circles and lands right there, 3 feet in front of me. So I think, well, a little bit of a coincidence, but you know, that's because I just read the whole story, and I reach over to pick up this butterfly, and it looks at me like I'm a butterfly. You know, I don't deal with humans. I mean, my DNA is programmed to stay away from you, and it flies away, and it goes out about 40 yards, and it makes a U-turn, and it comes back, and it lands on my finger, right here. And I look at it, and I have never had this happen before in my life. I've had butterflies brush up against me once, but I've never had one just seek me out. So it lands here, And I immediately reached for my cell phone, and I called Joanna, you remember? And I said, Joanna, there's a monarch butterfly on my finger. You know what I just read to you this morning, she said, as she always does. She's so sweet and peaceful. Meditate. I said, meditate? This is a monarch butterfly. I just wrote about him and Jack and all. She said, just go meditate on him. So I call another number. And I call Reed, the president of Hay House, my buddy, all right? And I said, Reed, I read to you this morning about a monarch butterfly. I've now got one on my finger. It flew to me. He said, get a picture. I said, what are you talking about? Get a picture. I've got my bathing suit on and a cell phone. I don't have a camera. He said, we've been thinking about what's going to be on the cover of the book. He said, this is perfect. Right away thinking about, this is inspiration. This is like it's come to you for that reason. Get a picture, get a picture. So I took Joanna's advice, and I meditated. Now it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon when this happened, and I meditated for 30 minutes, and I called Joanna back, and I said, it's still with me. And I called Reed back. He said, get a picture. So now this butterfly is doing, during the meditation, I don't know how to say this without sounding strange, but it's okay because every word of this is true. I swear to you, this butterfly was trying to talk to me. I don't know how close you've ever looked at a monarch butterfly, but it had tiny little, almost like teeth, but they're not really teeth. I know they don't have teeth. And I bring the butterfly up real close to my eye, and it's doing this. I swear. And I said, Jack? Because I had just written about him. I thought it was Jack. And then I took the butterfly and I put it over by my ear in case it was making little sounds and it had a little, I was just totally freaked out by this thing because it's now been an hour. It's been an hour. It's now, and it won't go. It's like I take it over here, I put it over on this finger, it's over here, and it won't go. And I'm going, okay, that was not, it won't leave. It's just connected to me. So I walk, I said, maybe Reed's got a point here. Maybe we need to get a picture of this thing. So I decide to walk back to where I live. And I walk along now on Maui in the afternoon, the trade winds come in, and they really blow hard in the afternoon. And I'm walking, the ocean is over here, the trades are coming in, and the butterfly's wings, toilet paper, are all the way bent over, but it won't leave. All the way bent, as far as it can go, and then I come back and I get out of the wind and it goes, it's like flashing and making sounds, and I hold it up. So I'm walking along the beach, the beach there, and there's a little girl she's about 4, 5, 6 years old, who's totally traumatized because she got the wrong color Slurpee. That's her issue, okay? Giving her mother more grief, I want to tell her about Immaculate in the bathroom. I want to tell her, she, I didn't want purple, I wanted yellow, and you gave me purple Slurpee. I hate purple Slurpees. Going on and on. It's real. So I tap her on the shoulder, tears are on, and I said, you want to see my pet butterfly? I did. She said, what's his name? What's his name? What's his name? I said, Jack. This is Jack. I did. And she went from, I don't know how to say this. She went from pissed to blissed, okay? I don't know if they can use that. She went from, being so upset to just this total state of bliss in just 1 second. The tears dried up. She smiled. She wanted to know if she could take it home. I said, no. What are you talking about? This is my butterfly, I get all the way back to where I'm going. It's now about 1:30 in the afternoon, about an hour and a half has gone by. I live in a place where they have a concierge downstairs, and there's a pool there, and there's a girl there, her name is Cindy. And I walk upstairs, and I call Cindy down at the pool, and I said, Cindy, can you walk over to the ABC store and get a portable camera and be here in 5 minutes? She said, you want me to come to your apartment with a portable camera in 5 minutes? I said, yes, I do. She said, why? I said, I want you to take a picture of me and my butterfly. She said, what are you smoking? I said, no, it's true. I found a butterfly, and she does yoga, and she's like one of these people. And she said, okay. I also said, there's $100 in it for you if you can get here in 5 minutes. She went up there, came back. She had got one of these little cameras. I went out, sat on the lanai with the manuscript, and I had 29 pictures she got of me with the butterfly. And I was posing with it. It was like, you know, over here. See my butterfly over here? My butterfly. I was. I didn't know what he wanted. I don't know what, you know. So she went. That's the actual butterfly. Truly it is. Now, we had to take a different picture because those, you know, $13 cameras aren't the kind you can use on photographs, on books, and so on. But I insisted that they put Jack on my finger on this, so they transposed it through, I don't know, through computers or whatever. So that's the actual butterfly. And if it flies out of there right now, I'm going to fall down, all right? I promise you. So I get back. I had the picture. She went, took the camera in, got the pictures developed. It's now around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's been, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's been 2 hours, right? But now I don't know what I'm going to do with this butterfly. What do you feed a butterfly? You know, what? Do I get a leash? You know, do I get a cage? Am I going to keep him? Do I, you know, get rid of him? Whatever. You know, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. But I set it down on the manuscript that I had handwritten that morning, where I talked about Jack and the monarch butterfly, and I set it on there, figuring it maybe recognized that this is where it came from or whatever. I had it walking around on the, and I went back, took a shower, it was gone, did a little meditation, did a little work, and so on. Came back, butterfly is still there. 2.5 hours. And I reached down after having taken a shower, and I put my finger down there, and the butterfly looked back up at me just like it did when I went to pick it up down here, as if to say, well, who are you and what are you doing? And I'm going to show you that I'm not sick and this isn't an accident. And it took up and it circled me and it took off straight out towards the ocean, made a circle, and was gone. All right? And that's my butterfly story. And it's... And what I'm suggesting to you is that you pay attention to the powerful things that show up in your life, and that these things that we call coincidences and so on are much, much more aligned with spirit than you may have ever thought them to be. There are no accidents in a universe which has an organizing intelligence that supports it and creates it. And anything like this, any of these kinds of things, can be very powerful messages. It's the language of spirit speaking to you. And there's no doubt whatsoever, no matter what anybody thinks, that I don't know that was Jag. And if you're in a place where there are no beginnings and there are no ends, and there's no north and there's no south and there's no up and there's no down, that means it's infinite and there's only one place. And if you're in a place that only has oneness in it, then it can be anywhere it wants to. That spirit can enter onto Maui on a butterfly just as easily as it can enter into a butterfly in Brazil or any place else. There's no space, there's no place.
So you see the theme of today of coincidences and the lack of them. So we're going to finish up with two more speakers. We're going to have Nick Ortner, who also, he's pretty new to Hay House, but he has also toured with Wayne in Australia, has helped Wayne on several occasions using tapping. And then Cheryl Richardson is going to come out after he is done, and she's been all over the world with Wayne as well, speaking at all the I Can Do It's and all those things. And then we're going to finish with a song from Sky Dyer, Wayne's daughter. So here's Nick.
Hello. Good evening. It's good to be with family, isn't it? I don't know how nobody's cried like bawling on stage. Have you guys been bawling out there? Because like all these professional speakers are just like keep it together in ways that I know I'm not going to today. I'm here on stage as a fan. I got the opportunity to get to know Wayne the last couple years, to spend some very precious time with him. But that was very limited compared to the time that I spent with him in my earbuds, on my iPod, in my home, on my TV set. Anyone feel pretty close to Wayne from having that experience, right? Those moments in our lives when, whether it be 2 a.m. on PBS, or just hitting play or shuffle on the iPod, and there comes his voice just when you need it. It feels like he was the butterfly that showed up in our lives just when we needed it. What Bruce said, the reality is that the majority of people in this room today are here to, yes, see some of the other speakers this weekend, but here most likely because Wayne in some way deeply touched their hearts. And he certainly touched mine. And I've been thinking as we all honor him today, and I'm a new father. I have a 4-month-old baby, which I'm, thank you, very excited about. And this is the first trip speaking, and I left her this morning for the first time, which was really hard. And I've just been thinking, as the evening has progressed, about how often he had to leave his family to go speak to us. And fortunately, much of his family traveled with him, was able to be with him. I remember reading stories about Tracy going in the car and the trips that Serena took around the world and everyone else who was with him. But I just want to take a moment to honor his family and his wife for giving us some of his time. I'm grateful for my wife and my daughter today that they're sharing me with you, and this beautiful family shared Wayne with us for so long. I think one of the things that happens when we have something that's shocking like this is that not only does it bring up the wound of this loss, the shock of this loss, but it can also bring up other wounds. We can be triggered about other people we might have lost in our lives. We can be triggered in ways that don't even make sense. I know I've heard people say that when they heard the news on that Sunday or that Monday, a part of them hurt so deeply, and it seemed to go beyond the loss of Wayne into the feelings of loss from other parts of their lives. One of the ways I was able to connect with Wayne in the last couple of years is to do this tapping process with him. Who here is familiar with tapping? Just a show of hands. Wonderful. Who thinks I'm going to tap dance for the next 2 minutes? Yeah? No, it's not in the cards tonight. So this tapping process, which I had the opportunity to do with Wayne, I don't have a lot of time to explain the details, but the bottom line is it's a system to access the body. We call it tapping because we're literally tapping on these endpoints of meridians of our body. And as we do so, we can heal past traumas, we can heal memories, we can heal old hurts that are holding us back. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to do a little bit of that. You guys game for it? So let's close our eyes and take a deep breath. Feet on the ground, feeling grounded and centered. And let's take a moment to feel some of the hurt that we may be feeling. And this isn't to dwell on it. This is a celebration. But we're going to take just a few minutes to just acknowledge this is how we feel. We feel pain around his loss. We feel pain in our hearts. And tune into that sadness. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's grief, whatever that feeling is. And then see what else comes up, because sometimes we might remember something that happened 5, 10, 20 years ago that hasn't fully healed. We might remember someone else we lost that we haven't grieved for. We might remember another trauma that is still within us. So just take an opportunity to notice that now, to feel it in your heart, to feel it in your body. And just quickly give it a number in intensity on a 0 to 10 scale. How strong is this pain? And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. And we're going to tap together, we're going to heal together. And Wayne's going to join us, tapping along. Very quickly, just follow after me, tapping on the side of the hand, and repeat after me. Even though I'm holding on to this pain in my heart, I love, accept, and forgive myself. Even though I'm holding on to all this pain, all this shock, all this grief, I choose to relax and feel safe now. Even though my heart hurts, because Wayne's not with us, at least not on this stage. I love, accept, and forgive myself. Now tapping through the points, eyebrow point, don't worry about getting it perfect, just follow after me. This pain in my heart, side of the eye, all this pain. Under the eye, all this grief. Under the nose, this pain in my body. Under the mouth, it's safe to feel it. Collarbone, and it's safe to let it go. Under the arm, this new pain. Top of the head, this old pain. Eyebrow, what if I could begin to heal? Side of the eye, to heal this pain. Under the eye, this grief. Under the nose, this trauma. Under the mouth, this shock. Collarbone, it's safe to feel it all. Under the arm, and it's safe to let it go. Top of the head, right now. Deep breath in. And just tune back in to your body and see how it feels. We only spent 2 brief minutes on this process, but you might find that your body is perhaps a little calmer, a little more grounded. And the tapping process, if you want to explore it further, is just continuing on this. I've done the process in depth with people around the world. One of the things that Wayne was really passionate about, we've heard all night about how he cared so deeply about causes throughout the world, and he certainly cared about the tragedy that happened in Newtown, Connecticut just a few years ago. And Newtown happens to be my hometown. I live 10 minutes from where the shooting happened. And when Wayne heard about it, and when he heard this incredible story of Scarlett Lewis, who lost her son and faced that loss and that terrible tragedy, he jumped in to help and support. And that's just one of tens, thousands, hundreds of stories of the times that Wayne has made a difference in people's lives. So I want to close by reading a letter, and I don't channel anything. I know there's plenty of good channelers in here and all that stuff. I just imagine this. So this is a love letter from Wayne Dyer to his fans. I won't make it through this. I'm just telling you right now. I practiced it this afternoon. I had a workshop for 100 people, and it didn't work. Didn't make it through then, so you'll excuse me. This is a love letter from Wayne Dyer to his fans, as imagined by his fan and friend, me. Here we go. Anyone ready to take over reading? Tarina, you want to do it? Okay. All right, good. Here we go. Dear beloved, that's you. I heard you calling. I heard you whisper in my soul, write. I heard you nudge my deepest self, speak. I heard you beckon me, teach. And so I began, knowing that you, my friend, would listen, knowing that as I connected to divine love, I could help you feel the same, knowing that as I forgave, I could teach you forgiveness, knowing that as I made conscious contact with my source, I could help you do the same. And thus, we journeyed together. August 1st, 1976, Your Erroneous Zones is published. I've got to admit, at first, I wasn't sure if you were listening. As I packed my car with books and sold them out of the trunk of my car, there were long days and weary nights. But deep inside, I knew that if I could just reach you, you would listen, and together we could change the world. From our first late-night meetings on The Tonight Show, sharing the message of Your Erroneous Zones, a book with that cover that sells 100 million copies must be great. Anyone see the cover? Look at the cover. It's a good laugh. You guys know. You guys know. To countless PBS specials. At 2 a.m., when you needed me most, there I was, pacing the PBS stage. As I wrote on my yellow notepad, you read, manifest your destiny. There's a spiritual solution to every problem. Wisdom of the ages. The power of intention. Change your thoughts, change your life. Wishes fulfilled. I can see clearly now, and so much more. As I graced the silver screen, you watched The Shift, my greatest teacher. As I meditated, you joined me. Meditations for manifesting. Ah. Who's got that in their head? Who can hear Wayne? And boy, did we laugh together. I'm 75 years old, and I have sex almost every day. Almost on Monday, almost on Tuesday, almost on Wednesday. She boarded the plane and sank in her seat. Then she sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned in despair, the others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that he was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. Who knows that one? Oh, that's Wayne. He gets everything wrong. I didn't say he was a scurvy elephant. I said he was a disturbing element. And now I must leave you. And now I must leave you in physical form. Continue my journey. This is where tapping helps a little bit, so we'll do a little bit of that. Fly out there beyond. I've got realms to explore and friends to meet again. Oh, Rumi, St. Francis, Emerson, and Keats. Is that Patanjali I spy over there? And Mom, oh, how I've missed you. Just in these few years we've been apart. And Dad, oh, thank you, thank you. What a lesson I learned. Forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness again. And so I depart, and so I must go. But know this, my dear friends, my fans, my sidekicks, yes, you. Know this, my dear loves, I am with you now and forevermore. As we've seen tonight, I live in the books, the speeches, the movies, and more. I live in the lessons we've been learning together. I live in the difference you're making each day. I live in the love you share with the world. I live in the kindness you show a stranger. I live in your heart. My dear friend, in your heart. And until we meet again, and we will, oh, we will, I love you. Love, Wayne. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to kill Nick after this. I'm just letting you all know now. It's a public confession. Yesterday morning, I woke up at 7 in Massachusetts, where I live. And it was a beautiful day, really beautiful day. And I woke up early because I wanted to finish packing. I was going to be flying here around, leaving around noontime to fly here, my husband Michael and I. And I got things done early, and I thought, you know, I'm going to go out for a walk beforehand. Much like Wayne used to like to swim every day, I've grown fond of walking every day. Being in nature feels like a spiritual practice to me. So I decided that I'd go out for a walk, and just maybe 45 minutes or so before we left for the airport. And as I started down the street, I was just looking all around at the beauty. The sun was out, it was like 70 degrees, and it just was such a beautiful, beautiful morning. And I started thinking about Wayne and thinking about this evening and what I was going to talk about. And I said out loud, as I often do, Wayne, listen, do me a favor. You know, I'm going to walk for the next 45 minutes or so. If you're interested, if you're around, which I know you are, do me a favor and just give me something to talk about. And then I continued on my walk, and about 10 minutes into it, I plugged in my earphones and turned on a podcast. I have a favorite podcast station called On Being. And I was listening to a podcast, an interview with this woman, Ellen Langer, who is, a lot of people call her the mother of mindfulness. She was doing research in the 70s about the effects of our thinking and our beliefs on the body. She did really powerful work way back when. And I found the interview fascinating, and so as I was walking along and listening to her talk about all of the evidence that they had gathered together back then during their studies about how what we think influences the body, I of course thought of Wayne and the body of work that he created that, you know, just constantly delivered that message. And when I got towards the end of the walk and towards the end of the podcast, Ellen Langer said, you know, she believes in mindfulness being an active noticing of yourself in everyday life. So for her, it's less about meditation and more about just noticing where you are right now in this moment, like where are my feet, right? Who am I looking at? You know, you can do things like look for something new in the people you know, and it brings you right into the present moment. And she talks a lot about active noticing as the practice of mindfulness. And so I was doing that during my walk, like looking for elements on the trees that, you know, I hadn't noticed before, or looking for butterflies. I often look for monarch butterflies. They're out right now. You know, just really trying to be present for where I was. And she said, you know, so many of us spend so much of our lives worrying, right? We're always worrying about what might happen or what's going to happen, and we're so mindless in our everyday lives. We're not present. And I thought about that, and I thought, boy, is that true? She said, you know, so in particular, worrying about the future is the thing that really prevents us from not only being present, but from being powerful and feeling strong and capable of handling anything that comes our way, which really makes a lot of sense. And she used as an example, she said, you know, for example, a lot of us have been taught that we have to save for the future, right? You have to work hard today, you have to make money today and save for the future so that at some point then you can enjoy your life. And the minute she said that, I immediately thought about my retirement fund and the fluctuating market over the last couple of months, and all of the money that I'd lost in my retirement fund. Anyone else know what I'm talking about? Right. Yes. And, you know, I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot, And my father worked 3 jobs to help put food on, to put food on the table. And I'd say one of my sort of core lessons and wounds in this lifetime is about feeling financially safe and secure. And so, and I'm a pretty self-aware woman, so as I'm walking and I'm thinking about my retirement fund, I'm also thinking about what Ellen Langer is saying. And she said, in that moment she says, if we just focused on being present here today, the future would probably take care of itself. And if more of us could just believe that, would be okay. And in that moment I thought, remember, Cheryl, what Wayne used to always say, right? You'll see it when you believe it. Your thoughts have tremendous power to manifest in your physical life. He believed that with, every part of his being. And I don't know, there was something about that moment when she said that, and I thought about what Wayne said, and I thought, I am going to choose to believe in the abundance of the universe. I said to myself, Cheryl, I have little conversations with myself, Cheryl, this has been an issue for you all your life. It's an unfounded fear. And here it is again. Choose to believe. If Wayne were here, he'd say, the world is an abundant place. Choose to believe in abundance. And in that moment, I made a decision. I'm going to choose to believe in abundance. And as I got to my driveway, I took the earphones out of my ears, stuck them in my pocket, and I turned into my driveway. And on the side of the road, right where the end of my driveway was this. Brian, can you just put the photo up? Now, I don't know about all of you. I find pennies all the time. And I find nickels and dimes, and I find quarters even. I've never found a $20 bill. I don't know how common it is. But it was one of those moments, the moments we all have, the moments that Wayne has talked about all his career. One of those moments where every part of your being stops in time and knows in that instant, with every fiber of your being, that this is what's real. That the world is an abundant place. That this physical form that we inhabit in this world that we live in is an illusion. There's something far greater going on. And I knew in that moment I could hear Wayne saying, okay, you get it? And then the second thing he would have said to me is, now make sure you tell people about this. Because he used to always tell me, when he and I would talk about different things that would happen in my life. I remember one time we talked about a very difficult situation. He actually really pissed me off because I was angry at somebody who had done something that was really unjust, and in my opinion, it was unjust. And I was telling him about the story, and I thought I was so right, thought I had a right to be pissed. And Wayne said to me, "You need to forgive this man." And I remember saying to him, "I'm not ready to forgive him, Wayne. Okay, I need to have my anger first." And he said to me, "Okay, you can have your anger, but at some point you need to forgive this man." And I fought him on it. And, he said to me, "Cheryl, you need to not only forgive this man for you, but you need to forgive this man for the people you teach. If you're a teacher, what if all of this happened just to teach you forgiveness so that you could teach it to others?" That's always how he thought. Everything that occurred in his life was fodder for a lesson somewhere, a class, a workshop, teaching. So I knew yesterday when that $20 bill showed up, which I will not spend, by the way, it's hanging in my office. I see it as a personal message to me from Wayne, and I choose to really let that anchor in the belief that the world is an abundant place. Wayne was a curator of magic. But it wasn't just for magic's sake, not some kind of cheap party trick. It's because he really believed in the divine source that created us all, that surrounds us all, that connects us to one another. And he wanted you to believe it too. He wanted all of us to believe it too. This morning I was rereading the afterword in the book, in his memoir, I Can See Clearly, which if you've not read that book, please do. I'm just so glad that he wrote that before he left. I'm so glad he wrote that before he left. And honestly, when I read the afterword in that book, I thought, that afterword, the message in those pages need to be read over and over and over again. Like, to me, that will be a ritual several times a year to read that, because everything he wrote in that afterword was just as powerful and important as any of the great teachers he ever studied. You know, as I read it, I thought he really did fulfill his soul's calling here on the planet. Wayne's the first person I've ever lost in my life where I didn't feel sad when I thought of him not being here. I actually see him in this childlike, blissful state, just beyond the veil, just beyond what we can see. The sadness I feel is for the people that he leaves behind. You know, when you live a public life, the people closest to you that you love pay a big price. And they pay a price that you'll never understand. And when I think about, you know, the message that we all need as we move forward here, I think about Wayne's fine. And you know what? He is here, as everyone said tonight, my just wonderful colleagues, he is here with all of us. He will continue to be here with all of us. This guy was compelled to be a teacher. He's not going to let the leaving of the physical body stop him, that's for sure. But I ask all of you to hold his children in your hearts, especially over the next few months. I think about Reed Tracy, my friend Reed. You know, Wayne was a deeply important person in Reed's life. And Reed was a deeply important person in Wayne's life because, you know, I thought about it. Remember when Wayne told the story about the butterfly and he said Reed kept saying, "Get a picture, get a picture." You know, it's just like a little symbol of, you don't get to bring your work to the world without a team of people behind you who love you and believe in you and take airplanes to get your briefcase, right? Or give up their weekends, or get on the phone. Probably, I guarantee you, Reed got on the phone with Wayne during his kids' events thousands of times, I would bet. Or Maya. You know, I think about dear Maya, who spent the last 38 years waiting for the phone to ring because she was a servant to this man so that he could bring his great work to the world. I think about her and what happens when the phone doesn't ring. For those of you who have lost someone you love, you know what it's like, especially if they've gone through a dying process and your every thought and, you know, you're always waiting for the phone to ring or you're taking care of them and suddenly they go and you're left with this big hole, this void. These are the people I pray for and I ask all of you to hold in their hearts. Wayne's very lucky. You know, very, very lucky. He was a smart guy to choose Reed Tracy because that man will be a great steward for his work in the world. And his work needs to continue because it's so deeply important. Wayne won't let the limitations, let me say it this way, Wayne is no longer limited by his physical body. We all get how powerful he was when he was here. Just imagine how he's going to kick ass from the other side. Right? I have a spiritual board of directors, and the people I love who have passed on are on my board of directors. Debbie Ford is the president of my board. Yes. I am now placing Wayne on my spiritual board of directors. God only knows what the two of them are going to do together. I could be in big trouble. Who knows? I invite all of you to think about developing your own spiritual board of directors, and I would invite you to put Wayne on your board. He'll be there to support all of us, to give us the signs that we need, to remind us of who we really are. Please, that was his message. We are the divine source, all of us. He will be there to give you exactly what you need at the moment you need it. You just have to remember to ask. Thank you very much for this evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so when most of Wayne's PBS shows, he would have his daughter Sky sing at the end. Many of his lectures for the last 15 or I don't even know how long years, Sky has been singing during those lectures. And so we're going to bring Sky and the entire Dyer family up here on the stage. Come, everyone, please. There's the stairs right over here. I'll leave it to you.
Hello, everyone. We just want to say thank you so much for loving our dad and for sending all of us so much love. I used to sing this next song to my dad at a lot of his talks. It was one of his favorite songs. It's called Leader of the Band. I'm going to try to get through this, by Dan Vogelberg. Dad, this is for you. A lonely child, alone and wild, a cabinet maker's son. His hands were meant for different work, but his heart was known to none. He left his home and went his lone and solitary way. He gave to me a gift I know I never can repay. A quiet man of music, denied a simpler fate. He tried to be a soldier once, but his music wouldn't wait. He earned his love through discipline, a thundering velvet hand. His gentle means of sculpting souls took me years to understand. The leader of the band is tired and his eyes are growing old, but his blood runs through my instrument and his song is in my soul. My life has been a poor attempt to imitate the man. I'm just a living, I'll get through this, legacy to the leader of the band. My brothers' lives were different, for they heard another call. One went to Chicago, and the other to St. Paul. And I'm in Colorado when I'm not in some hotel, living out this life I chose and come to know so well. I thank you for your stories and your stories of the road. I thank you for your freedom when it came my time to go. I thank you for your kindness and the times when you got tough. And Papa, I don't think I said I loved you near enough. The leader of the band is tired and his eyes are growing old, but his blood runs through my instrument and his song is in my soul. My life has been a poor attempt to imitate the man. I'm just a living legacy to the leader of the band. I'm just a living legacy to the leader of the band. I am a living legacy to the leader of the band. Thank you. Thank you so much.